Okay, there we go.
Okay, should we start now?
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
start.
Okay, so Sam, nice. Okay, sorry. Hi, Sam. Thank you for taking the time to chat with us.
Sure, no problem. Like, really happy to be here.
Okay, so could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'll do it in a tweet form. So I'm a
Yeah.
product designer for Spotify. I was previously a web engineer. I love coffee. I collect board games, and I play video games as a hobby.
Ah, nice. So can you tell us a little bit about your role at Spotify?
Sure. So I'm the lead product designer for monetization. So what that means is, I aligned with my squad. We call them squads, and I can talk more about that later.
Sure.
But like we work on the various efforts of the free tier on Spotify, so enabling free users to have a better experience, and that's essentially what I do as a product designer at Spotify.
Oh. I see a lot of people calling themselves product designers and UX designers. So
hmm
I think it would be nice for us to know the difference between a product designer and a UX designer.
Sure. So in Spotify, I think what product designer means is that it's more of a jack of all trades. Like we like people that are hybrids. So not only do you have a good foundation on UX, you also have like a good visual design sense to actually execute on some of the UX thinking, or that, or like you might have a really good experience in UX and you can actually do a little bit of coding to prototype the ideas that you're thinking of. So not only are you working on the problem sets that UX problem solving entails, you can actually do some of the implementation when it comes down to it. So you work very integrated with your team. And I think that's a little bit different in like other cases. If you're just a UX designer, which are very, very useful in like other companies, it's a little bit more specialized in where you do more of like the user research aspect of it, as well as like fine tuning the workflow before that's handed off to like a visual designer that puts like the layer over it, right? So in Spotify, it's more of like a one-stop process where we do all of that aspect and then sort of work together with the engineer to actually get that made.
Oh, nice. So if I work at a company as a UX designer and a visual designer, can I call myself a product designer because I'm a little bit hybrid? Something?
Totally. I think that's absolutely valid, right? Because I think those both values, well, I think the most important part is that uh, you have to be working for a product, right? I
Yeah.
think that's like the main thing. I think there's a difference between like a UX designer that's not built for a product based, which are still valid, but I don't know if I'd actually consider them a product designer.
Yeah. So you said that you work on squads.
hmm
So how is the design team work?
Yeah, with the squads.
Yes.
So essentially, squads are built around functions. So in the case of Spotify, like a squad would be sort of like the different aspects that we have on the app. So we have a radio squad that just focuses on the radio aspect. We have the social squad that focuses on like the social aspect. Um, and so like how those function is that each squad is essentially like its own little startup, right? It
Yeah.
has its own engineers, it has its own product owner, it has its own tech lead, and it has its own designer. So they do really work like a small startup in trying to get their features out, which is really cool.
And talking about product development, do you work with agile methodology such as
hmm
Scrum or?
Yeah, so the cool thing about working in the squad is that we sort of have the flexibility to choose the way that we work. and each team could sort of have a different process and how they get stuff done. So let's say one squad will have strict Scrum Agile style.
Uh-huh.
Another might have more of a loose like Kanban style, right? Like they could use different tools, and really it's like we leave it up to the squads to find their own best methods to come
Mm-hmm.
up with like the products. And personally, like I think like my team, we work in a semi-agile. Like I do believe it's considered agile because we do like daily stand-ups, and we have like weekly goals and all that stuff. But integrating design into that is a little bit trickier. Like I think agile is more built towards engineering, and
Yes.
sometimes like and it's really beneficial because having the designer integrated into that team just makes it a lot easier for that process to flow better.
So when your squad define the goals, how do you align those goals with other squads?
That's actually a good point. So a lot of times what we do is what we have product days at Spotify. So maybe like twice a year, all the product leads and the design leads would all gather up in Stockholm, and we make sure that all of our goals are in alignment. And this usually is reflected by like what the company goals are, right? And there we sort of talk about, hey, like these are the next few things that we're going to be making. We're making them because it lines up to these goals, right?
Oh, nice. Uh-huh.
And so it gives us a really good chance to see what the other squads are doing, what the other teams are doing, and if there happens to be overlap, then we go. It's the perfect time to be like, hey, we should work on this together and make sure we get that out the door.
Uh-huh. But you have one person or one squad that puts all of them together, like they take what each squad are doing in a line.
hmm Well, I think that's mainly what product days is for, is to make sure that we're all in alignment.
Uh-huh.
But usually it's all the like, there's a lot of meetings with the product leads to make sure that they're in alignment as well.
Okay. And how do you define the new features or your goals for each spring?
So I see, in a squad level, I think we just make sure um, it's dependent on like the roadmap that we're setting. Obviously, like our company mission drives a lot of that, right, to like what our goals are, and we just simply try to break it up on times of like, if we want to release something by a certain date, we just try to make sure like the next things that we work on. But in regards to like what features go out, I think that's more of a thing that we're carefully calculating to try and differentiate our product to make it better on like either like a you know 6-month basis or like a quarterly basis.
Okay. Okay, so talking about product design,
hmm
I saw that Spotify has upgraded the design, the interface design last
hmm
year. So can you tell us how was the work to define the new Spotify look?
Sure. So that was a really interesting a project. So when I joined Spotify, it was about a year and a half ago. And by then, that was sort of like when they did a lot of the research and started thinking about like how can we make this better? Because I think at that point when I joined, Spotify was still kind of a mess in terms of visual. Like it kind of looked like a strange version of iTunes where one part was dark and then one part was light and then like another part was like kind of gray,
Mm-hmm.
and that was not a good look. And it's great that the company sort of immediately realized like, hey, we need to do something. But I think one of the main reasons why we made such a big push is that it was sort of slowing us all down in terms of getting a consistent look and feel out, right? It didn't really have a unified design language. So we spent a lot of time trying to build up principles that would guide us to come up with like this unified design language. And one of the first few steps we did was we made simple iterations of like what the app looked like then with like simple fixes, right? We
Uh-huh.
made one where it was like, let's see how it does if it's just the same UI, but it's all dark. let's see how it does if it's just the same UI, but it's all white. And then let's see how it does when we instill like our new principles and then come up with something that we think is really cool,
So
right?
this was sort of a A/B test, right? It was almost an A/B test.
Yes, it was a multivariate test. So it was like we recorded different factors, like things from how did it make you feel to did it feel easier to were you able to do things that you did before. And luckily, like we looked at all of that in all of our different iterations, and the one that we sort of banked on in terms of the new look and feel was the winner. So we felt that was like the right direction to go.
So, yeah, I saw when you were talking about this user testing on your Harvard talk,
Hmm.
and I think you call it emotional design test or something like that because you tested the user's emotions when they were looking at the screen.
Right.
And I thought it was very, very interesting, this test. Me personally, I never saw something like that.
Hmm.
So how can you walk us through the process? How do you capture the emotions and how did you know that?
Right. So I wasn't involved in that test. We have a really good user research team here that actually does some of that stuff.
Hmm.
But I believe that was actually it was a sort of a standard test to test emotions for like user interfaces. And I think what they do is they show the interface, and then there's a list of emotions that a user can choose from whenever they see that.
Oh, okay.
So it's like there's set words that they can pick and choose, and we gathered all of that information, and thankfully, our new design sort of had this great notion that this was pleasant to look at and it's easy, which were the things that we were sort of hoping to get from the users.
Nice. So you do a lot of tests, right, at Spotify. You
Hmm.
guys, you have this idea and you test it to see if it works.
Right.
And how do you get the inspiration for creating the new visual design? Like your visual designers, they do like benchmarks or something? Because I must say that my personal inspiration for visual design is Spotify because I love the interface.
Hmm.
And I was talking with a friend this week. I was saying, can you imagine that we, our inspiration is the Spotify interface. So what's the inspiration for those designers at Spotify? Because they're so good. So
That's awesome to hear. We're glad that we're inspiring other designers. That's something that we don't normally expect, but it's great when we hear that back. But for us, obviously there are lots of beautiful apps around us, but I think it'd be sort of short-sighted of us if we took inspiration from those apps. So instead, we sort of built principles from the ground up that guided our inspirations, right? Like one of our inspirations, one of our design principles is to, like some of our design principles would be like make make things feel alive, right? Um, Simplicity, like don't get in the way of like the cover art. So those kind of principles are like what we held in coming
mhm.
up with these designs. So if you look at our designs now, we almost let the album art speak for themselves. So we
Yes.
don't put anything over it a lot, like there isn't a badge or anything that goes over the corner. And we try not to do that because we feel like album arts are really beautiful and those should stand out. And that principle is essentially what led us to like the dark background. Like how do you really make the album art come alive? It's like if you sort of frame it with like a dark background, then it makes the album art come alive, right? So it's sort of like those principles that we use to guide our inspirations. And we thought about like, okay, let's talk about these principles a little bit more and come up with these examples. And those examples are essentially what led us to the design.
Sure. And to validate those principles, do you use data or analytics to make sure that those principles are working? And
So I'm sure somewhere that we do, but I think initially, because those principles were sort of like well founded, we feel, we sort of went with our gut to
okay.
come up with those designs. But after we made our designs from our gut, we then validated those, which were essentially the tests that you saw.
Uh-huh. But you said that you have a user research team, right?
Hmm.
So, do you think it's important to uh, do a lot of research, or maybe just let the creativity speak for itself?
I think it's always important to get a varying degree of user research done, right? So I think there's a time and place for every type of different kinds of user research. There's a time when we should be doing like, simple regular check-ins with our users to say like, hey, like this is like the second week you're using this. Do you get how to do this? Versus, like the full-on, we'll bring 500 people in a
Uh-huh.
lab to record like where their mouse is going, where their eyes are going. I think there's a time and place for that kind of stuff. And I think for us, it's really important to know when to use those type of research. Like it could be as simple as me going down to like the reception area and saying like, hey, does this make sense to you, by showing like a mock-up or a prototype, versus getting the user research team involved and saying, these are the things that we want to validate.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I'm asking this because I work at a digital agency, and I see there's a lot of prejudice from UX designers that work at companies because I think they are very pragmatic, like
Hmm.
they follow the book. They like to do everything how it's supposed to be, like the research and all those steps. And
Hmm.
working at the agents, I see it's the opposite. You have to do like with the most creativity, and then after you launch, you can fix some issues.
Totally. I think there's a time and place where if you just want to be completely creative, right? Like you just have to sort of go with your gut and
Yeah,
believe that a functionality will be the winner, right? But I think after that's made, user testing has to be done if that's actually valid, right?
yeah, nice. So let's talk about prototype. I'm kind of following a sequence here. So
Hmm.
after you have the design, the
Right.
interface, do you prototype? What tools do you use? How do you do it?
So again, there's a varying amount of prototyping that you can do, right? I think there's something as simple as using like a Flinto prototype to get like a really simple walkthrough on your phone. I think that's super effective to see like how it actually feels on your phone really quickly. But a lot of times, because our app deals with live music and it's something that's interactive, we need to go a little bit deeper, right? So what I found effective is like actually just creating HTML, CSS prototypes that you're able to use on your phone. There's actually a really good app called Proto-C that allows you to download zip files of like HTML, CSS, and allows you
Right.
to turn it on like an app. And with that, we're actually take our prototypes to user testing, and they'll feel like, oh, it's actually like a section of the app that they can actually play with. And because it's like a standalone zip file, it can have like music files and all that stuff to actually play music.
Oh,
So yeah,
cool.
varying
Cool.
degrees.
You just said something about mobile, and I've been talking with a lot of people that create products to desktop, primarily to desktop. But
Hmm.
nowadays they are very focused on mobile because it's getting huge every time. So can you tell us about the importance, the role that mobile plays at Spotify? Is it more important to focus on the mobile experience now? How
I
do you
think,
see that?
yeah, I think, well, so for Spotify, like we recently launched the mobile free tier, which is about a year and a half ago, or like maybe a year ago. And ever since that's happened, more and more users have been using, excuse me, more and more users have been using the mobile app. And so for us, it's sort of like a natural progression. Um, but having said that, there are some features that we know uh, our desktop users are going to be quicker to adapt to versus our mobile users. So let's say if it's something for social, it makes complete sense that it's going to be prototyped on the mobile device first to see what that feature feels like, because more people will likely to like share with their friends or something like that on mobile. But
Mm-hmm.
if it's something that's a little bit more like power user or like focused, like, maybe it's something like integrating like a playlist somehow, that involves more fine tuning. That sort of makes sense for us to come approach that from like a desktop standpoint. But ultimately, like, mobile is very important because more and more people are using it. But we also have a huge user base on desktop, so we can't forget about them.
Yeah, but the user base on mobile it's bigger, right? I guess it's bigger.
Yeah, it's huge. It's definitely bigger than our desktop for now.
Yeah. So you are a product designer at monetization, right? So
Hmm.
can you tell us about the ad formats? Because I love the this jingle thing, that not the jingle thing, but the audio ads formats. I think it's very well thought. So can you tell us about the ad formats a little bit?
Sure. So, so at monetization, what I actually do is we don't actually come up with the ads. We come up with like the different ad formats that like the sales and marketing team can use. So for us, it's a really good opportunity to find ways to present promotional products to users without it being, too disruptive to the listening experience. So one of the ad formats that I really like is called sponsored sessions. I don't know if you guys have that in Brazil. It's when you
I
start like a playlist or
I don't
something.
think so. No. How it does it work?
So when you start a playlist, it'll ask you if you want to watch a video. And if you watch the video, a video is going to be from like 15 seconds to like 30 seconds. And after you watch it, you will have 30 minutes of ad-free listening. So you won't be interrupted again for 30 minutes.
Oh, but that I can only see this if I'm not a premium, right? If I'm
Yes, you only get that if you're a free user.
that's why I don't know because
I see.
I use the premium account. I don't see the ads.
Gotcha. Yeah, so for free users, that's actually really beneficial, right? Because let's say you want to go out for a run and you know your run is going to be about 30 minutes, and you want to listen to music and you don't want to be interrupted by ads if you're going for a run. So it totally makes sense if you're like, hey, yeah, I'll just watch this 15-second video and then the next 30 minutes are going to be ads free. So that would be one ad format. Another ad format is what we call the homepage takeover, and this is on desktop. So what we have is like normally it's like a banner on top of like the browse section.
Uh-huh.
But the sort of the thing that we wanted to do is that it takes a lot of effort to actually come up with like that creative, right? And a lot of times if you ask like external people to create that creative, not only does it take a long time, it also sometimes could be very ugly, right? It doesn't match the interface at all.
Mm-hmm.
So we came up with this format that was native to the platform. So all they had to do is provide a Spotify link to the album that they wanted to promote, and it'd just be like one line. And when they did that, we would auto-generate the ad format that looks very nice. So it has like,
Nice, that's nice.
yeah, and it uses like the cover art. You can actually play from it. You can save it. You can follow it, and it all generates in real time. So the person who's promoting it doesn't have to do anything, right? So it not only makes it easier, but it also looks better, and more people
Yeah.
actually end up listening to it, which is great.
Yeah, but how do you come out with those ideas? Like, it's a new kind of experience, right? Related to music. You have to search for how people are experience music in new ways. How do you come up with those ideas to the ads?
Right. So that's a good question, and I think we do a lot of brainstorming. So the product owner and I and the developer would occasionally like sit together in a room and say like, hey, let's think of a new format that people might like, right? Like, what are some moments that people are listening to Spotify that would actually benefit uh, from like a promoted product, right? So some of the ideas that we have are like, hey, if you're walking by like a store that you really like, maybe the next ad you hear will be from that store saying like, did you know that there's like a 25% discount or something like that, right?
Uh-huh.
Something that might be beneficial. So that would be like something that we'd brainstorm. And after we brainstorm it, it's like we can check, all right, is this really valid? Like, are people actually going to use it? And then so on and so forth.
Nice. How is the relation between Spotify and the music industry? I'm curious to know
Yeah,
the problems, maybe.
yeah. So I think that's more of a question for our legal team. But
Okay.
I think overall, yeah, I think overall we have companies that really like us. We have companies that are a little bit unsure, right? But overall, like we gave back over $2 billion to the music industry with the revenue that's made from Spotify. So that's a very significant number that otherwise wouldn't have been generated, like over radio or like downloading. So we feel like we're doing good, and a lot of the labels do like us.
Yeah, and the users. Everybody uses
Right.
Spotify. So I guess that's the questions. Would you like to say something else that would be nice to people to know?
Yeah. Not so much, I guess. Yeah, I think overall, like, product design is something that's becoming more and more prevalent, right? I can easily see product designers um, sort of leading the way in more efforts in the future. Like you're sort of seeing a trend now where like a lot of companies are being run by product designers or ex-visual designers that have like a really good product sense.
Uh-huh.
So I feel like that's like sort of like what product designers should be thriving for. It's like, how can we actually build products in an effective way? Um, so yeah, looking forward to seeing how product design becomes more integrated in like a company level.
Nice. What's coming next for Spotify? Can you tell us, or is there a surprise coming? Something?
Yeah, there is a surprise coming. I'm not sure I can tell you about that, but we recently had a press release about our Sony PlayStation integration,
Oh,
which is
nice.
really cool. So Spotify is now integrated with the PlayStation platform on a system level. So you can actually listen to Spotify while you're playing your games on the PlayStation.
That's interesting. So
Right.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's really cool. I think it's actually going to launch on Monday.
Oh, nice. Okay, so let's go to our final questions. So it's a set of questions just to know your thoughts on life and work.
Hmm.
So, a great product people should know.
A great product people should know. Oh, I've been using this one application called One Shot,
One shot,
which
I don't
is
know.
yeah. So it's for iOS, and it allows you to take a screenshot of whatever you're reading. But the way that it does things is like so seamless and so simple. It essentially just allows you to take a screenshot of what you're reading and then highlight the part that you really like and then tweet it out. And it's the way that the interface is done. It's just very simple but so effective that it sort of feels very natural to use it on a daily basis.
Okay, I'll check. I will post the link below so people can see it.
Great.
So, your predictions on UX or product design for this year?
I think it's going to be more integrated on a company level. I think, like I said, there's going to be more companies that sort of stem up from ex-product designers or UX designers. I think product designers who know like a really good business sense are the ones that we should look out for, right? They're going to be building stuff that's really cool, but also scalable at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and more and more product designers are becoming engineers as well, which is a great thing. So I think this might be like the start of like getting a lot more cooler companies or even apps that are made by product designers.
Nice. So the question everyone wants to know, to work at Spotify, a designer should be which skills or
Um, at to work at Spotify, designers should be always willing to learn, um, have no ego, and be friendly. I think everyone that I've encountered has those characteristics. So everyone at Spotify that I've met is super friendly, right? Not only
yeah.
that, like they're all willing to teach each other something. but also that like they're also willing to learn something from each other. And you know, when it comes down to it, everyone's sort of willing to just like roll up their sleeves and work. Like it's not about like, hey, you know, like I'm a creative director. I'm not supposed to do Photoshop or something like that, right? It's really
Yeah.
like, hey, you know, like let's get this done and let's get it out the door.
Yeah, which is something that happens a lot. People
Right,
get the ego in the middle.
right, which is
Uh,
unfortunate.
yeah. How do you feel it's important, the formal education in design?
Um, I think there's varying things, right? I think the formal education is not really that important. I think what's important is the effort, right? I mean, you can have someone that goes through like a formal education, but if the effort isn't there, I don't think that person will be an efficient designer, right? So if someone who didn't have a formal education just puts the effort in to knowing about what design is all about, I think that's just as reflective in their work. Um, so yeah, I think formal education these days might not be as prevalent because we have so much resources around the web that's just as beneficial.
Yeah, exactly. Um, how do you define success, and do you think you have found yet?
Um, that's a
That's a
very
tricky one. That's a
yeah.
tricky one.
I think you can define success if you're happy, right?
Yeah, sure.
Maybe. Um, but even though I'm happy now, I don't think I've found it yet. So that's not really the answer. Um, I think maybe success is tied towards uh, doing what you love and people benefiting from it, or you benefiting from it. Maybe
Yeah,
that's it.
I think so too. And the coolest one. If I wasn't a UX designer, I would be
Hmm. Maybe two answers for this. I think if I wasn't a UX designer, I would be a chef,
a chef. Nice.
yeah, or a game maker.
Interesting. Well,
Yeah.
you still can be a game maker, right? It's
Yeah.
almost the same field.
That's true. That's true. So maybe a chef.
Yeah, chef. Okay, so I think that's it for today, the questions. I would like to thank you very, very much again for having the time to talk with us. It was very nice. I think a lot of designers, beginners will benefit from this talk. And yeah, I just want to thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Andrea. Thanks for getting this together and happy to contribute.
Okay. Okay, guys, see you on the next UX Talks.
Bye.
Bye. Sam, again, thank you so much for having
Sure.
the time. You were very nice to talk with us.
Great. All right.
And that's it. Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
I'll see you later.
See you later.